President Trump's tariffs are crushing Chinese e-commerce companies that have been flooding American homes with cheap crap, low-quality goods. The value of small parcels sent from China to America fallen off a cliff, down 40% from a year ago. When the president says leveling the playing field, this is what he means. American retailers can now compete. Shine and Temu raised prices and are seeing double-digit sales declines. This is involving the small packages, Gary, that come out of these garbage retailers. And that's the quality, the garbage is the technical term for the quality of the products that they sell. But so tariffs actually slowed down. So these tariffs have actually slowed down consumption of these goods. And somebody called me this morning who's a professional investor yelling into the phone saying, how can Jay Powell, the Fed chief, argue that they're waiting to see the inflationary impact of tariffs before cutting rates when tariffs are like laying a 10% consumption tax on America? That's not inflationary.
Tell us what you think about these products, Dagan. Wow.
You clearly don't shop there.
Look, tariffs have consequences. It'll change the buying habits. It'll change the selling habits. And that's what you got going right now. And now you have the Fed, a little fight going on. But I will tell you, and you can mark this down, Fed's Waller today came out, signaled the markets. That's what they do first. They will cut rates in July. Only going to be a quarter point. It's not going to move the needle. And I know Powell's been saying tariffs are a worry, and that's why this, that, the other thing. But they're going to go ahead and assuage the president. He'll be a little bit happy, but then he'll call for a point or 2 points. But again, back on the tariffs, my worry since the get-go is too much is too much. I'm glad they backed away. The markets know it, and let's just hope it stays that way. We do not want to go back to a liberation day where all these countries. I still remember the Under Armour and those stocks just crashed because they got all their stuff from Vietnam or Taiwan, and once they backed away, the stock soared. So I think they have to recognize that, and let's hope we can just move forward. And I've said this before to you, Brian, I think 20 times. If we can come on the show and stop talking tariffs again, I'd be a happy guy because, I'm a big believer in free markets. And I think the going is good right now for the economy. And just back away a little bit, and I think we're going to be in good stead.
Yeah, there's easing inflation, and Jay Powell is full of shine and full of Temu.
I was just worried you were going to say something.
No. I should note that the source of these problems with Shine and Temu is because President Trump ended the de minimis rule exception or exemption for China and Hong Kong shipments. So that's packages valued under $800.
I'm glad that it's slowing demand for those products. It also tells me consumers are seeing they can live without things. They're not being told, for the libertarians who are watching, they're not being told you can't buy those things. They certainly are available to be bought, but they're finding either ways to replace them or ways to go without them. And I think that as a country, we consume way too much of this excess garbage, Dagan, as you rightly call it, that we don't need. And I'd like to see people take that extra money. Hopefully they're saving it and not trying to replace it with other products, potentially cheap junk here. But take that money and invest it. Take it and pay some debt down. I don't see anything bad about this report at all.
To add another wrinkle in the story in terms of the tariff and the trade conversations, really good reporting out of the Journal this morning talking about how when it comes to then chip stocks specifically, not targeting some of the retailers like you've talked about with the de minimis rule, but adding fuel to the fire, chip stocks may be facing new possible limits on how they export to China. And this is not just U.S. chip stocks. It's how we think about our chips within our allies like ASML, TSMC, and how they are now able to sell or not to China. The Commerce Secretary is spokesman saying that basically these new rules want to make sure that they put the U.S. on an equal and reciprocal process with other export semiconductor companies. So Again, more tools that we can use when we think about tariffs and trade. And we have long talked on this program, you guys, about if it's a good idea that they get China some of our AI chips. And do we want China to have our AI chips because we want the world to be running on American AI and our allies' AI? Or is that just fueling China's ability to break them apart, steal, do them for cheaper, and then cut us out? So again, this is another added issue.
The semiconductor stocks have been the strongest stocks in the market recently, and as soon as this news came out, they crumbled for obvious reasons. You said something about China, and do we want to sell to them? Yes, we do.
Okay.
American companies selling across the world is a good thing. Now, we do know about China. We're all worried about what they steal and what they're going to do and ID this and that. That's where, the hope is the President of the United States, who says he's one of the greatest negotiators of all time and deal makers, can sit down with his counterparts over there and come to some happy, because we don't want to just shrug away 1.5 billion people of China that can buy a lot of our stuff.
Yeah, but that's been the talk. Yeah. But that's been the talk for so many years. And China did not open for American companies. That's been the critical issue. They're not open. They're not open for business when it comes to us.
Well, I agree with that. I mean, we've been saying we want them to be a domestic consumption economy for a very long time. But also, I mean, I hear what you're saying, Gary, generally speaking. But I've been the guy who sort of said, well, do you really want to send your best semiconductors to China? Like, semiconductors are fuel for the race of the century on AI, and our biggest competitor is China. Why do you want to put gas in their tank? That's what I don't understand. I mean, I understand it's a big business opportunity for our semiconductor companies, but do we really want to put gas in China's tank? Sell them other stuff, but why? We wouldn't sell the Soviet Union our top-notch military equipment in the 80s or the 70s or the 60s. Why do we want to sell them our top-notch semiconductors to China when if they beat the heck out of us in AI, we are in trouble?
And Elon Musk learned his lesson with setting up shop in China, and he essentially helped with the people who were working for Tesla in China. He trained people who then quit and went and built BYD into a competitor that is now shellacking Tesla.
I mean, that is true.
That's what they do. They steal in every possible way.
I mean, push back on that, but that's just, I just think that semiconductors are different than selling them almost anything else, really.
My main point is that if we can ever get to the point where we are in good stead with them like this, we're talking about a gargantuan marketplace for us, just to get to that point.
No argument on the
I do not disagree with anything said here.